Henry was rich beyond measure, yet he chose to sit on the streets like a beggar, to find the one woman who could truly love his son, not for his money, but for his heart. Henry had lived many years. He had seen joy and sorrow, kindness and cruelty. And now, he was on a mission not for himself, but for someone he loved more than life itself: his son, Mark. Mark was successful, handsome, and kind-hearted. But there was one thing he refused to do: get married. He had dated several women, but none seemed right. Each time, Henry tried to talk to him about love, about building a future, but Mark always said the same thing: "Dad, I don't need anyone. I'm happy alone." But Henry knew better. He believed that true happiness came from sharing life with someone who truly understood you. So he made a plan, one that would test people's hearts without them knowing. Every day, Henry dressed in simple, even ragged clothes and went out into the city. He pretended to be a poor, lonely old man with nothing but his cane and his dignity. He wanted to see how people treated those with nothing. Because if he could find someone with a kind heart, maybe she could be the one for Mark. That rainy afternoon, as Henry sat quietly on the bench, a black SUV sped down the street. It swerved through a deep puddle, sending a wave of cold, muddy water crashing onto Henry. He didn't flinch. He only looked up as the driver rolled down her window. It was Lisa. She was young, beautiful, and full of herself. She smirked at Henry through the open window. "Old man, you shouldn't sit so close to the road," she said, her voice sharp like broken glass. Then she laughed, turned up the music, and drove off, leaving Henry soaked and silent. The people nearby saw everything. Some shook their heads. Others muttered under their breath. But no one did anything. No one except a young woman standing nearby. Her name was Rose. Rose watched Lisa drive away with a look of disbelief. Then she walked over to Henry with a softness in her eyes. Without saying a word, she pulled out a handkerchief and gently wiped the mud from his face. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "Some people forget what it means to be human." Henry looked at her. There was something different about this girl. Not just her kindness, but the way she carried herself, with humility, strength, and grace. Rose had studied early childhood education but couldn't find a teaching job. Instead, she volunteered at a local community center where she helped children from poor families learn to read and write. When Rose offered to help him clean up and even asked if he needed help finding shelter from the rain, Henry smiled for the first time that day. He didn't tell her who he really was. Not yet. Because he knew, in that moment, that this young woman might be exactly what his son needed. Days passed, but Henry couldn't stop thinking about Rose. Her kindness, her gentle spirit, and the fire in her eyes when she spoke about helping children, it all stayed with him. He knew Mark needed someone like her, someone who saw value in people beyond their wealth or appearance. So he decided to test fate again. The next morning, Henry returned to the same bench, this time sitting beside a small grocery bag filled with stale bread and an old thermos of tea. He wanted to see if Rose would appear again. And as if summoned by his thoughts, there she was, walking through the busy street with a warm smile on her face. Rose walked toward him in a faded dress, her hair tied back, a small bag slung over her shoulder. She spotted him instantly and smiled warmly. "Good morning, sir," she said, sitting beside him without hesitation. "Did you sleep okay last night?" Henry gave a faint nod. "You keep coming back." "Most people don't." Rose shrugged. "Most people don't listen to others anymore." "I do." "You know," she said gently, "people like you are often forgotten. But you matter. You always have." Henry felt something stir inside him, a deep respect, almost like the pride a father feels watching his child grow into someone extraordinary. She reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped sandwich and a bottle of water. "I brought this for you," she said gently. "I know it's not much, but sometimes a full stomach makes the world feel a little lighter." Henry took the food with shaking hands. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, studying every bit of her soul that showed through her eyes. Later, as they talked, Rose told him about her life. She came from a poor family in a rural town. Her parents worked hard but barely made enough to survive. Despite the struggle, she finished school and dreamed of opening a small learning center where every child, rich or poor, could study in peace. But money was tight, and opportunities were scarce. Still, she refused to give up. Henry listened intently. As she spoke, his heart swelled. Here was someone who hadn't forgotten how to care. "I believe everyone deserves care," she said. "Even those the world forgets." Her words struck Henry deeply. He saw in Rose what Mark needed. Not riches, not beauty, not status, but compassion, strength, and a heart that never gave up on others. That night, Henry returned home to the mansion he shared with his son. As he stepped into the warm, elegant living room, he found Mark waiting with a tired expression. "You've been disappearing a lot lately," Mark said. Henry simply smiled. "Sometimes, you have to go far to find something close to your heart." Mark didn't understand then, but soon he would. But fate wasn't done testing their paths. Later that week, Mark went for a walk near an empty lot where children played with makeshift toys and laughter echoed despite the dust. He paused when he saw a young woman kneeling beside a group of kids, helping one tie his shoe while the others giggled. It was Rose. He watched as she helped a little girl count marbles, correcting her gently when she miscounted. There was patience in her touch, joy in her voice, and warmth in her presence. Without realizing it, Mark found himself stepping forward. "Hi," he said softly. Rose looked up and smiled. "Hello." They talked. About books, about children, about life. Hours passed like minutes. Neither knew who the other really was, but something unspoken connected them, something real. When Mark finally left, he felt different. Lighter. Happier. For the first time in years, he thought maybe his father was right. Maybe love wasn't about status or convenience. Maybe it was about seeing someone, and being seen in return. Back at home, Henry watched his son walk in with a glow in his eyes and a new energy in his step. "I met someone today," Mark said, almost surprised by his own words. Henry didn't react. He simply smiled and asked, "What's her name?" "Rose." "She's different, Dad," Mark said softly. "She sees people. Not their clothes, not their money. Just them." Henry's heart swelled. He nodded slowly, hiding a quiet smile. He knew what was coming. But not everyone was happy about it. Lisa had been watching from afar. When she saw Mark laughing with Rose outside the lot, something dark twisted inside her. She had always believed life was a competition. And now, someone poor, someone ordinary, was winning? Never. Lisa could not stand it. From the moment she saw Mark laughing with Rose outside that empty lot, something inside her twisted. She had dated Mark for months, driven his car, worn his gifts, and even told everyone he was hers. But now, someone else had caught his attention. Someone poor. Someone ordinary. And that, to Lisa, was unacceptable. So, she made a plan. That very night, she called a man named Jack, a former acquaintance who had once worked for Mark's company but was fired for stealing. Lisa knew his bitterness ran deep, and she used it. "I need you to do something for me," she said coldly over the phone. "Something that will make sure Mark never wants to look at that girl again." Jack hesitated, but money always spoke louder than morals. He agreed. The next week, Mark arrived at the lot where he had last seen Rose, hoping to see her again. Instead, he found trouble. As he walked through the alley behind the community center, two men stepped out of the shadows. One was Jack. The other, a stranger. They grabbed him before he could react. Then, they shoved something into his jacket, something wrapped in plastic. Before Mark could fight back, they pushed him to the ground and disappeared. Moments later, police arrived. They searched him and pulled out what had been planted, a small bag of illegal drugs. Mark was stunned. He had no idea how it got there. He tried to explain, begged them to listen, but the law doesn't stop for shock or innocence. He was arrested on the spot. Word spread fast. Rose heard about it the next morning. Her heart dropped when she saw the news online. Wealthy young man arrested with illegal substances. She refused to believe it. Not without proof. Not without answers. Meanwhile, Henry returned home from another day on the streets, only to find his mansion surrounded by reporters. His son, his only child, was locked up, accused of something he didn't do. Henry knew this wasn't random. Someone had set Mark up. And deep down, he feared who was behind it. But what Lisa didn't know was that Jack had second thoughts. Back when Mark fired him, he had been angry. But Mark had also given him a chance, offered him help finding honest work. It was the only time anyone had treated him like a person instead of trash. Now, Jack owed Mark something real. So instead of disappearing after the job, he recorded everything. Lisa's call, the setup, every detail. He sent it anonymously to Henry's private email. When Henry opened the file, his hands trembled. Proof. Truth. Justice. Within hours, the police reopened the case. The evidence against Mark was fake. He was released. But the damage was done. Rose had seen the arrest and felt confused, hurt, but not angry. Something didn't add up. So when she saw Mark walking free the next day, she approached him. "I never believed it," she said softly. "Not for 1 second." Mark looked into her eyes and saw the truth. The kind of love that doesn't run when life gets hard. The kind of love that stands. Later that week, Henry revealed everything to Rose. He invited Rose to his mansion under the pretense of needing help with paperwork. When she arrived and saw Mark waiting beside him, confusion filled her face. Then Henry smiled. "I'm not who you think I am," he said gently. "I'm not a beggar. I'm Mark's father." Rose's breath caught. All this time, she had been speaking to the old man on the bench, thinking he was poor and alone. Now she realized he had been testing people's hearts, including hers. Mark stepped forward. "You passed the test." And then, he took her hand. Together, they began building a life, not on wealth or status, but on kindness, trust, and love. Lisa, meanwhile, was arrested for orchestrating the frame-up. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, her pride and cruelty finally catching up to her. Mark and Rose married in a quiet ceremony surrounded by those who truly cared. As a gift, Mark gave Rose's parents a modest house in the city, so they would never struggle again. And Henry. He watched his son live the life he had always wanted for him, with someone who truly loved him, not for what he had, but for who he was. In the end, kindness won. Because sometimes, the purest love isn't found in riches or power, but in the heart of someone who sees you when no one else does. True character is revealed by how we treat those who can offer us nothing. Rose's kindness to Henry, when she thought he was just a poor old man with nothing, showed the depth of her heart. In life, how we treat others, especially those with no power or wealth, reveals who we truly are. Kindness without expectation is the rarest and most valuable kind. Pride and selfishness always lead to downfall, while humility and love build lasting happiness. Lisa's arrogance and desire to control others led to her ruin, while Mark and Rose's genuine connection, built on respect, care, and truth, led to a happy, meaningful life together. Real strength lies not in power or money, but in the ability to love selflessly and live humbly. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in love and kindness. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that touch the soul. See you next time.